rabbit hole that is reality. It's about casting light on a whole spectrum of topics, because reality really is the ultimate reality show. Our interests cover and touch many bases. We snapshot the stories that have caught our eye in the news, information that raises eyebrows and questions, and reading stories between the lines, looking at science, technology, discoveries, and the environment, as well as at history, mysteries, strange tales, and the Fortean. So whether you're here in search of knowledge or dipping in for entertainment, we're here as people just like you, passing our social commentary on what inspires and affects us. Welcome to what is Rabbit Hole That Is Reality, Episode 10, in association with UK Collapse Radio. Thank you for tuning in and choosing to spend time with us here today. I shall be your host, Christian Lander. And Rabbit Hole That Is Reality. rabbithole.thatisreality.co.uk is where to point your browser. Every episode is available to play, to stream, listen, watch, and download, and now available on iTunes. You can also add the RSS feed to the likes of Miro, Banshee, and all the other podcast players out there, sending new episodes straight to your media library automatically as soon as they are available. Join us also on YouTube and click to subscribe. We really are endeavouring to make it easy for you to have access to the rabbit hole. Follow us on social networks such as Twitter and Facebook at Define Christian and at Sylvia Dragoon, and search Rabbit Hole That Is Reality on Facebook. So where do we start today's view into the rabbit hole? I think we have to start with the logical story of what is catching everyone's attention right now. That is Grand Theft Auto 5. It came out last week. There's some stories of stabbings, thefts. TV says we should ban the game. People are saying it's a terrible game. Kids should not have access to this kind of content. They don't. That's down to the parents giving it to the children, because the game is rated an 18 for a reason. Now, those particularly of the Truther movement should actually, instead of speaking out against this game, actually be supporting this game. And I'll come to why. And because the context of the game and the content of the game, clearly the developers know what is happening in the zeitgeist of their times. Hospitals have been bankrupted by a Wonga-style private finance initiative deals. In fact, some hospitals have been bankrupted by this so bad. In fact, we saw a story spoke out at the Liberal Democrats conference a couple of weeks ago that saw a report that a hospital had to pay £52,000 to have a lock changed on a door. Absolutely extortionate happening to us taxpayers. Australia's new government dumps its science minister posts. Now, how are we going to get a balanced view in Parliament if we don't have a science minister? Happening in good news, in fact, we have in northern Italy, they have found the remains of a child born of both human and Neanderthal. They found the first crossbreed, effectively, of them. Fantastic story that will be. And also eco-madness, bizarre cases of justification done in the name of climate change. Just remember, climate change at the present time in the papers, in fact I read it in the Independent yesterday, it's currently on a break. Climate change is having a break, yeah, bizarre. We look at the story of why you can now play with Anit-Matter in your own home. How you can also get involved in a fantastic experiment. With this episode taking us news wires all around the world, we look also at iPhone manufacturer Foxconn over in China. They've had one of their plants closed for an investigation after 2,000 of its workers rioted after receiving beatings. We can only imagine they're not making quota with the new iPhone 5S on the way, and every savvy, consumer-driven person here in the UK and America clearly wanting one. Then we go, after the break, after a pause for thought, we go half a world away to the Atlantic Ocean, where in recent times they have discovered a number of pyramid structures located on the Azores, which is the mountain range found in the Atlantic. And of course this has brought the conversation up, has Atlantis been found again? But anyway, it's oddly enough, because back in the beginning of January 2012 we gave a presentation to the Empyrean Society here in Nottingham, actually on the mythology of Atlantis. And actually it was really well researched and really well put together. And in fact what we'll do for next episode, in fact we'll do a rundown of that presentation, and I'll let you guys see what you think about that, because that had some scholars and some people from the university actually go, well, I didn't know that. That was really interesting. So, coming back and focusing on this episode now, where we shall end today on our Fortean section, the section what amazes and inspires, and this is the Codex Gigas. Codex Gigas is a book of Fortean interest. It is a compendium of historical text illustrations. It's about 200 pages long, and it dates back to the medieval age, and it's written entirely on human skin. And also, allegedly, was wrote in one night. All this and more coming up on Rabbit Hole That Is Reality today. So as we hop around the world for today's episode, let's start off in your living room right now. Potentially you might have Grand Theft Auto 5 in your Xbox or your PlayStation 3, and of course it's getting a bit of a bad rap in the press right now. There's been a stabbing over in the US, and there's been muggings and beatings over here. Many copies have been stolen. You know, we're now seeing a cry on the media and in the press to have the game banned. In all fairness, the game actually is pretty damn amazing, and as a game in terms of its context and its technological achievement, despite being the most expensive video game ever made, is a complete work of art. There's no other way to describe this. And anyone who's actually played Grand Theft Auto, particularly Episode 4 and Episode 5, will know, in fact, it's actually a parody of Western culture, focused on the disillusion and the disenchantment of the chasing the American dream. You know, with two guys coming over from Eastern Europe trying to make it in America, and obviously getting unfortunately embroiled in the gang culture, and obviously how their life followed them after that. They were obviously trying to get away from that way of life. And of course, in 5 here, you have 3 main characters whose life is intertwined with each other. And in fact, I mean, 5 really, there's more in Grand Theft Auto 5 about, from the truther movement perspective, in the sense of we have a society that is controlled by social networking, manipulation of media, and how you have control of people. You know, in fact, there's a drug trip which one of the characters has, which throws you literally into They Live. You know, with all the signboards saying obey and stuff. You know, manipulation of the stock markets to benefit those. They are in fact contextual stories within the game itself. I mean, in the game, there's social networking. There's 2 social networks in the game, obviously mirroring Twitter and Facebook. The Facebook one, of course, is called Life Invader. And it's a complete satire of Facebook. In fact, the slogan is, "We want your data to peak, to pry, and to populate." And there's a particular mission that takes you inside Life Invader to hack a prototype of what they're putting out there. Not that unlike what Facebook are doing right now. So there's a brainstorming office, and it has whiteboards on the walls and stuff about the plans that's going on behind Life Invader. And in fact, I had to take a few notes of what was on these. In fact, one of them says on one of the whiteboards is, "Remember, we aren't ripping them off if they haven't read their terms and conditions. No privacy equals no lies." I can't help but wonder how similar this is to Facebook's own offices. You know, the truth is, I mean, Grand Theft Auto 5 has 3 main protagonists, and they interact and cross paths with each other in a way that's not that dissimilar to Quentin Tarantino's Pulp Fiction. So keep calm, let us share. I mean, there's so many references in the game to a one world government, a new world order, control of social order happening in the background. In fact, there's a couple of cults in the game that the game makes many references to. You can't help but notice the similarity to the likes of Scientology and those behind the government, the shadow government kind of thing. You know, there's more happening in GTA 5 to let people know about the crazy stuff that's happening in our world than a bunch of stamping hippies in a market square somewhere. No disrespect intended, but I guarantee you more gamers will be switched on after playing this than standing out in a field somewhere. But of course, that is just my opinion. I actually recommend you go out and buy this game. It actually really is a damn good game as well. So where do we go next? So heading over to America now on our whistle-stop tour around the world, we head to Washington DC, particularly in regards to a story of Aaron Alexis. 2 stories here that I find stand out because they're very strange, and one has to understand the timing of these events in regards to the situation of world affairs and what is happening countrywide in that country. In America right now, there's a massive push to get the guns out of the hands of the people. Second Amendment, they want that thrown out of the window. And one, again, looks at the timing of this. This is, so Aaron Alexis, of course, he was a former military personnel. He is military personnel because he had his card and so on, actually managed to get on the base. He was suffering from post-traumatic stress syndrome, PTSD, and was on medication for that, called trazodone. Now, which is known for a number of side effects, including suicidal tendencies, panic attacks, depersonalization, anger, and symptoms of withdrawal include aggression and violent behavior. One has to think that he might have been mentally unstable Obviously he's come back from Iraq or Afghanistan, wherever it was. I'm not quite sure. It did actually quote it in the story that I did read. And of course, maybe he's disillusioned with things. I can't say I blame him right now. However, the second part of the story is the first one I saw, in fact. It was a YouTube user called Dubbo77. He managed to capture the man, and he took screenshots. In fact, it was a story that was evolving before it actually happened. Now, let's look at this. So, September 15th, okay, in the evening, September 15th, the Daily Courier cited the Associated Press with an article entitled, the article was actually called FBI Police Shooter Reported the Military Building in Washington Naval Yard, Multiple Victims. ABC also posted, Shooter reported a military building in Washington Naval Yard, citing the Associated Press. However, the Associated Press did not report this story until September 16th, after the event. That's right, the event happened on September the 16th. How on earth did the ABC and the Daily Courier manage to put this news story out on September the 15th, before the event happened? These news stories quickly went down, but not before a number of people managed to get screen grabs of this. Mainly, in fact, in regards to the ABC news page, actually it was just the title. Now, anyone who's familiar with the likes of WordPress or Joomla or Drupal, anything that's a CMS-based, a content management system website, means you literally can create posts, create a title, you can obviously just post as a title and it'll appear on a main page, etc., or you post your content, and you can even have it appear on a certain day in a calendar-style system. One can't help but think that this story was wrote potentially to go out on the day, but of course they posted it, on the night time. Someone clearly had clicked post and clicked send, and it appeared on the website. There was no content, there was no story other than the headline. But this headline appeared the day before the event happened. Answer me that. That's just a mindfuck, which obviously leads to many, many other questions. Did they know this was actually going to happen before the event? That's the first question. And if so, how much awareness did they have of this? Because the story in the Daily Courier was actually a full-fledged article, as the one at ABC was just a headline. So it means that the stories were actually written in advance of the event occurring. One can't help but think what that means, really. One wonders how many twists and turns there's going to be in the story of Alexis and this shooting at the Naval Yard, because two other twists are certainly apparent as well. On the side of his shotgun, he actually carved in the initials ELF weapon. He had a Remington tactical shotgun, ELF. And just type it into Google, it only really yields one result, apart from companies. ELF stands for extremely low frequency, and refers to communications and to weather. Now, the report about these carvings is because it seems to confirm a claim made by Alexis that three men were following him using an ELF weapon while he was in his hotel room. He actually reported that at a police station. He filed the report at Rhode Island Police Station, Newport, stating the claim that he has had to change his hotel 3 times because people were using a microwave machine on him. Don't you think that's a bit suspect in itself? This actually happened on August the 7th. The police alerted the Newport Naval Station about the incident. However, they didn't hear from Alexis again. Although he was being treated for multiple disorders, Aaron was able to keep his security clearance, enabling him and his keycard access back to the naval building's 4th floor, and of course, we know what happened from there. So, on my way home today from work, I came past a doctor's surgery up on Sherwood Rise, and I posted this up on the UK Collapse Network Facebook page, and also you'll find this picture on the Rabbit Hole That Is Reality website as well. And it is, this van was parked on the side of the road, and basically was delivering consumables to the doctor's surgery. But what drew my attention, what drew my curiosity, was in fact the logo and the slogan plastered across the side and on the back said, "Delivering value to the NHS." So therefore the van emblazoned with all the NHS logos can't be from the NHS because they're delivering value to the NHS. So obviously it set off my curious mind. So there's a website in the back, and so I followed the URL, and I found out actually it's an operating brand of DHL, a private company. Of course, they deliver parcels and stuff worldwide, and the website that it is effectively is a hub e-commerce site for for consumables and equipment for doctors and also surgeries, obviously to order their materials in, like Blue Roll, all those kind of things that you would need to operate a business. In fact, it encourages NHS managers to use their site all the time. And in fact, I shall quote you from the website itself. It says, we manage the procurement and delivery of 620,000 products ranging from bandages to baked beans, gloves to implants, and even diagnostic equipment such as MRI scanners. So I'm betting there's a nice markup there. You know, the fact that DHL is buying that equipment, buying those consumables, which they have to then sell to the NHS. And of course, we know that companies, the NHS, of course, is suffering quite badly right now. We had a story a few weeks back of how at the Liberal Democrats conference, where it was announced that they had to spend £52,000 on a door handle at a hospital because that was the only contracted company they could use for that. Of course, they're being forced to pay over the odds. There's nothing they can do about it. It had me thinking that's why obviously why it came into the conversation. And people wonder why the NHS is struggling. You see these stories in the press and go, why are managers making such bad decisions? Why is the NHS being struggled to find the funds? You know, when it's forced to use contracted companies, allocated companies for services and materials and equipment and consumables. And obviously, if it's having to use certain ones, those companies are there to make a profit. They will put up the prices. They will go out of their way to raise the funds because that's what they're there for. My workplace issued a statement today, in fact, to the colleagues and to the managers in regards to the fire service strike that's occurring between the hours of 12 and 4 p.m. When this happened, I was very surprised at the apathy that happened from the other people, the other colleagues that work there. That was, why are they striking? How can they be doing this? This is terrible. Why can they be doing that? How can they be putting people's lives at risk? Well, actually, do you really think they want to do that? They're being driven to a point of, extreme pressure to make a statement about what is happening. They're losing their pension, they're losing their wages, they're losing their salary. They're forced to take pay cuts. And these people are putting their lives on the line for the people. And now, of course, we're seeing, privatisation of the fire and rescue services throughout the country. And we wonder why those working for them want to make a stamp. They want to stamp the floor and go, this is wrong. This shouldn't happen. So they've arranged a strike to happen, and to make that public statement and to make people aware of what's going on. But the apathy was just incredible. How can they do that? Why should they do that? That's just terrible. They've got no right to do that. Well, actually, they do have a right, and we all have a right. If you work somewhere and you do not agree with something, get together with your friends, get together with your fellow colleagues, and say this is wrong. I completely applaud the fire service for having to make this extreme decision, but they have to say this is wrong. Talking of workers making a stance against, putting their foot down against an oppressive system, over in China, these people have to be applauded. 2,000 Chinese employees of an iPhone assembly line company, which is Foxconn. Of course, Foxconn notorious. They've been in the press over the last few years. Their iPhone factory, of course, which that particular one in that story employed over 18,000 people, and they basically it's a dormitory system, and many of them were committing suicide due to the fact they were being forced to work 18 hours or more a day and living in the factory to make quota. Now, of course, this story more than likely follows the same lines, although what it actually is not being spoken about, other than the people who worked at the factory have been used for their social networking, talking of the fact that the workers are being beaten there by the guards and those who actually are employed by the company to actually make sure they're in line. It's no surprise that 2,000 people actually put a foot down and says, no, this is wrong. Jeff Cothrell, he is the communication director at the Chinese Labour Bulletin, which is a labour rights group based in Hong Kong. He stated in a statement that there's no dialogue and no means of resolving disputes, no matter how minor. So it's no surprise when disputes escalate into violence, and particularly when you're under those kind of conditions. The Reuters story goes on to continue how the factory, this particular factory, employs 79,000 people. And is owned by the world's largest contract maker of electronic goods. So you can only imagine, literally, your social life, where you live and where you work is the same place, and you're forced to work potentially 18 hours a day or more to make quota for new electronic products that obviously we in the West consume at a rapid rate. It's no surprise that people are just saying it's wrong. However, the Chinese government did respond to this, not by support. They sent in 5,000 officers completely armed to the teeth with riot shields, helmets and batons, and they So I can only imagine how in the 4 hours that from that time until the siege was called off, how the Chinese police officers dealt with that situation. With science and technology in virtually every aspect of our society, and everything we do from our mobile phone to our ways of communication and technology to our progression in the future, science and technology really are a core part of our society at virtually every level now. Now, isn't it strange that over in Australia right now, they've decided to omit a science minister? The new cabinet has decided to omit a science minister. Don't you think that's rather foolhardy? They now want science to be largely an industry portfolio, i.e. a money-making business, rather than being one of a technological or an academic point of view. I mean, I know over in Australia right now, there's actually the large radio telescope system. It's been like, what's it called? It's called SKA. SKA is what it's called. It's this international telescope array. It's one of the largest in the world. It's actually been going on there for 30 years. What is going to happen to that? You need a plan for managing that. I mean, sure, I understand that budgets get slashed, but you can't access something like a science minister who fights for science's point of view inside the cabinet. That information and an advisory board needs to be given so governments can make a decision on their future. Are we going to have a state of affairs over in Australia where creationism takes over the government again? And what I mean by that is, think about how particularly in a lot of states in America, where you have creationism now being taught in the science classroom. We're only 3,000 years old. God made everything. Dinosaurs didn't really exist. They're sent here to test your faith. They're not real. Despite the fact that there's empirical evidence, science is about empirical evidence, where you have something happens, a theory is put together, a hypothetical theory, it's tested, it works, it's peer-reviewed against someone else who does the same thing from a separate study, a separate university, and it works together because we find what works, how it works, and why it works. And we now have a point of view on Australia where that's not going to be the case. Is religion going to take back over the government over there? Is that really a safe place you want to be taking your government? Where potentially you're going to be starting to see the big fluffy man in the sky is the reason why everything happens again. And how do you feel about that? Not having a science point of view in your government at all. How do you feel? We're going to be having a look at eco-madness now. Stories that have been used to justify climate change that just make no sense whatsoever. And I really want everyone else to know about them because they are just stupid. Okay, this one comes back from March, a few months ago. This came by my inbox. Earthworms are blamed for global warming. That's right, earthworms. Those little fellas who are in your garden that the birds eat every day. Those little ones you can put in your hand, and of course, if your name is Bear Grylls, you might want to eat them on a regular basis. Just when you're out in the wild. Well, so we don't want to do that. We don't want to eat insects. And of course, that is on the cards. I'm sort of being told to eat as an alternative to meat. But no, stay with this story. Getting a sidetrack there. Yeah, it's almost to the point where it reads like it's satire. Daily Caller reported back earlier in this year how a new foe has been found to be an accelerator of global warming, and that is earthworms. That's right, earthworms. I tend to think that the eco-zealots are just trying to pull out all the stops to justify this kind of carbon tax, this green tax. Earthworms play an essential part in determining greenhouse gas in soils worldwide, and the influence is expected to grow over the next few decades, reads the extract. But they are thought to stimulate carbon sequestration in soil aggregates, and that's therefore an increase in emissions in the main greenhouse gases such as nitrous oxide and carbon dioxide. Oh my god, that's right, they just blamed earthworms for farting too much and therefore causing global warming. Who would have thought, who would have imagined that the humble cow and the earthworm have so much in common, an invertebrate and a mammal? Here, I mean, think about it, just think back to 2006 when cows worldwide were blamed for climate change. Do you remember that? I certainly do. There was a United Nations report that identified, due to the rapid growing herds of cattle, was actually considered to be the greatest threat to climate change. and they were blamed for a whole lot of other climate things as well. I even heard things they caused acid rain due to the huge amounts of methane they give off. And what do the eco-zealots wish to do about this? What do you think their solution is in regards to this problem? From the cows they were accusing back in 2006 to 2013, where they're accusing earthworms of being the main cause of climate change, when in fact any sensible person will tell you that the climate change is always occurring. Climate change has never been as stable. In fact, the time we're living in right now has been the longest length of stability there's ever been for thousands of years. The world is in a constant state of change. However, what they wish to do, if you head over to Yale 360, which is their science journal publications online, in fact I'll point you to the article directly within the links below. Here's what they describe to be the solution to this, is we must kill the polar bears. I shit you not. Their solution is to kill the polar bears to save the world from global warming. You know, you just can't make this shit up. You just really can't. So I've got the webpage open right now. Let's just give you a few quotes from this. Where are we looking? So yeah, here it says they are stressing that the time is nigh to euthanize polar bear populations in Canada, Alaska, Greenland, Norway and Russia. I quote now, controlled reduction of the population size through harvest might be necessary to ensure both human safety and a viable but small polar bear population due to a result of declining habitat, unquote. Isn't it interesting how these conservationists intend to go about this? Humane euthanasia of polar bears that are unlikely to survive due to global warming. Euthanasia will be the most humane option, again I'm quoting here, for individual polar bears in poor condition that are unlikely to survive under the circumstances. One of the leading polar bear scientists who authored this bizarre proposal, his name is Stephen Amstrup. He emphasises the purpose of this and the suggestions for polar bear management. Now, I'm just reading this. I'm quoting from this, so I'm just reading at the same time as I'm talking. So it takes managers and policy people aware of all the kinds of on-the-ground actions that can be applied to make them think of the different and varying levels of cost that will be involved in the different options they may choose. Another scientist mentioned down here as well, there's a guy called Yale's Ed Strudzik. Scientists realise that it is difficult to sell these controversial management strategies to the public and to policymakers. Therefore, an impetus for action will be the increasing threat to humans in the Arctic from hungry bears forced off the ice and into land. That's right, they're going to tell us that humans are therefore under threat, therefore they can justify going to kill the polar bears. What the fuck? What the fuck? And he actually quotes, I've got his page up as well, in regards to his story that he says here, the sooner we consider these options, the sooner we'll have a plan. The worst case scenario is a catastrophic early ice sea breakup with hundreds of starving bears, followed by inappropriate management options. So following those quotes there, and I really hope you go and check them out. So they're certainly talking about it's the lack of habitat and the lack of environment that there will be is the reason they're going to be pursuing those solutions. Now, there's actually a couple of other stories that spread out from there, as tendrils on a shoestring story. The one of them is the fact that one kind of contradicts this fact, but it'll make sense in a few moments. The one story is the northern gateways, as they're called, north of Russia. Icebreakers are having to use their heating elements much earlier. In fact, as early as the end of July and the beginning of August, as opposed to the end of September. Therefore, indicating there's actually a lot more compact ice up there than there has been for any period of time in recent knowledge, in recent history. The other side of this is that the Arctic ice is actually losing its reflective sheen. And what it means by that, it's common knowledge that every summer, as the ice melts, there's now less ice in that area that is reflecting sunlight. When it's white ice, it reflects sunlight, so typical. But instead, it's called sea ice. It means, yes, there is more ice, but there's less on the surface reflecting sunlight, which therefore actually accelerates the global changing process of climate. And for the first time ever, there's been a 30-year study on satellite data of the Arctic Ocean. That was done by the Finnish Meteorological Institute, and their study has been published in New Scientist, and that was back in August Of course, you can visit that on their website as well. So, and this is the causing of the darkening rather, is due to the fact that the ice is now thinning ice, and so the surface layer, of course, is melting, and the ice is there, but it's now under the surface, so there's less ice acting as a reflector, and the shallow ponds on the ice dramatically reduce the reflectivity, and therefore increase the amount of solar radiation that the Earth is absorbing, and therefore it has an increase on the melting effect. So there is ice there, yes. There is much more ice there at the same level as the water level. So yes, these Arctic icebreakers are, of course, in effect, because the ice is the same height as the water. So now you have, and it talks about this in this story here, is that more than 50% of the ice in the Arctic Circle is now only 1 year thick ice. Mostly it's meltwater that's frozen as a crust, as opposed to ice that goes down about 2 or 3 meters or more. So the melting and darkening of the ice is going to have a major factor on the climate change to come. So before we head off into a break and we catch our breath, because there really has been a lot of information here to digest, and we like it that way. We like our brains to be engaged. How would you like to play with antimatter? That's right, antimatter. In your very own home, in the safety and security of your own home, you can actually participate in one of the world's biggest experiments, in fact, put together by the guys over at CERN. This is going to involve members of the public analysing particle tracks over the internet in an attempt to answer the weirdest question of modern physics, or whether antimatter falls up. That's right, you can actually get involved with this. It's really, really, really simple, despite the fact it's going to be really difficult to put together. Well, physicists have found a way, or rather they haven't found a way, to find how gravity works. There's theories that suggest that matter and antimatter work by gravitational-like forces, but they're trying to find that for sure. And the idea is that anti-gravity might actually fall upwards. It has not been ruled out, and they want your help with this. And to answer the question, there is what's going to be called the Aegis experiment. You can head over to the CERN website now and get involved with this. Their laboratory, of course, is over the Hadron Collider over in Geneva, Switzerland, and they're planning to shoot anti-hydrogen atoms at normal matter. So the idea is they're going to bombard these things, speed of light, and then cause them to be annihilated, and then produce a whole host of different particles. However, the tracing of the tracks of these particles, the software for it doesn't actually exist yet. It's in development. It's still work in progress, as they say. The software they've currently got tracks neutrinos, which produce different tracks. The idea is they want to crowdsource people getting together to watch animations based on these particle explosions and try to find out where the lines are on particle paths, because humans are actually much, much better at spotting paths than computers are. So they actually want us to get involved with this. And I think it'll be a lot of fun at the same time. Plus, we're helping science answer the really big questions about the universe. And what can be more exciting than that? On the other side of the break, we're going to be looking at these pyramids that have been located on the Azores, and also the Codex Gigas, a compendium of historical texts and illustrations of 200 plus pages dating back to the medieval times, written entirely on human skin. Yes, all this and more coming up. Rabbit Hole as reality on the other side of the break.
You can't shoot from the hip and look for solutions if you have not learned who's doing this to us, how they're doing this to us, and the documents that tell us how they are doing this to us.
You're death?
Exactly. Now, shall we get down to business? Time of departure is midnight tonight. I trust that will suit you. We do listen to appeals, but frankly, when there's very little here in the way of an extenuating circumstance. There are 3 major categories of appeals. One is hardship cases. Now, do you have a wife or family who might suffer beyond a reasonable point your demise? The second category is priority cases, statesmen, scientists, men on the verge of discoveries. I don't think you're qualified here either. Unfinished business of a major nature. Well, you don't have any unfinished business.
The rabbit hole that is reality. Of across the spectrum of topical talk, news that raises an eyebrow, science, technology, the environment, mysteries, strange tales, and the tortilla that is both informative and entertaining. As you spread our wings and catch our stride, you can find us now on the web, rabbithole.isreality.co.uk, where you can listen, download, and watch all the episodes produced so far. Find us on Facebook, facebook.com/rabbithole.isreality, or follow the presenters on Twitter at Defined Christian and at Sylvia Dragoon for commentary, insight, and conversation. This is the Rabbit Hole that is reality. Welcome back to Rabbit Hole that is reality. We're here now on the other side. Let's see what we got coming up on the show today. Don't forget to visit our website, www.rabbitholethatisreality.co.uk. You can find all of our archive episodes available online right now. You can watch, you can play them, you can listen to them, you can watch them, you can download them as an MP3 to listen to wherever you want. We really do try and make it as easy as possible for you to be able to listen to the radio show that we produced. And don't forget you can check us out on iTunes. You can stick the feed into your podcast player, whatever you've got. I don't care whether you've got Miro or Banshee or whatever your podcast player is. There's tons out on Android. You stick the feed in there, and you'll have new episodes sent straight to your media library. You can also visit us on YouTube as well. Click subscribe, become a member, help support us. Just clicking subscribe, it does just that on the most simplest of levels. Checking out a few stories at this side of the break. One of the very first stories as a child I was fascinated with was Plato's story of Atlantis. And believe me, there's been thousands and thousands. In fact, there's been more books written about Atlantis than any other subject in history, in fact, and we don't want to be going down that line. But it's a story that's fascinating. The idea of an ancient culture in the past that was sunk under some cataclysm. In fact, and that's why this story has come by me. This is why this article was sent to me. Someone saying that they found Atlantis. Well, I don't believe that's the case at all. But what it is they have found is a subaquatic pyramid structure. It's literally just off the coast, not 40 metres off the coast of the Terceira island of the Azores. It's a perfectly squared structure. It was actually by a private yacht owner just doing general sailing. His sonar picked it up. His name is... the name I can't barely pronounce, to be honest with you. It's Celciano Silva, and like I said, it's been located 40 metres off the coast of the Terceira island of the Azores. This happened on the 19th of September 2013, so it's really, really new. And it's approximately 60 metres high. It's a massive structure when you think about it. It's recorded using CPS digital technology. It's perfectly shaped. It's orientated also to the cardinal directions, according to a local newspaper called the Dario Insula. Now, over the last 2 years or so, archaeologists from the Portuguese Association of Archaeological Research have identified archaeological evidence along the Azorean archipelago, which supports the belief and the understanding that there was actually human occupation there that predates the arrival of the Portuguese. So, where does this put us in the world then? We've found another place in the world where other ancient cultures that built pyramids. We're finding this all around the world, really. Why did our ancient ancestors feel the need to build pyramids? And obviously, what were they pointing to? It'd be interesting to see how this aligns, say, with the stars, for instance. How you look at the pyramids of Giza, they were aligned clearly to the stars of Sirius and of Orion. It'd be interesting to see where this one aligns and mirrors the stars. Was it built for that kind of purpose? I'd be grateful to see where the story goes next, really. For those who don't know, I've looked at the strange, the weird, and the wonderful, the best part of my life. I've written about them many times. I've got over 140 published articles on many different subjects of the paranormal, the unexplained, the mysteries, and so on. And one story that's always kind of stood out is the Codex Gigas. This is an article I wrote back in 2009, and basically what's happening, I'm currently moving hosting of my website, and it's paranormalnetwork.co.uk, and there's a number of articles published in there. I hope you go and have a look. But the particular story, the Codex Gigas, is a story I hadn't read. I literally wrote it. And if you've never heard of it, it's not unlikely. But it's a manuscript like no other. It's otherwise known as the Devil's Bible. It's known by that is because it contains a large, incredible illustration, completely bizarre, of the fallen angel, Satan, Lucifer, Samarazel, and it's actually the largest medieval manuscript still in existence. It's actually made up of over 160 human skins, and it's a meter long, and it takes 2 people just to lift it. And it's written in Latin. It's dated to around 1210 AD. The Codex Gigas has actually brought about disaster and pain for all those who've possessed it and many others who are around them. Stories of plague, fire, destruction, mental illness, and the story of its existence itself is filled with mystery and evil, which is why, of course, it appeals to me, because I think these stories are deeply fascinating, rooted in our culture. Now, it's known that the manuscript had, at one time, 320 pages. 7 pages have mysteriously disappeared without a trace. Supposedly highly secretive, or possibly more obviously, they contained rules for the Benedictine monks who had this at the time. The legend has it, this 320-page compendium was completed in a single night by an individual monk who was condemned to inclusion. In fact, he was bricked up alive for his sins, and he was aided by selling his soul to the devil. To help guide his hand to perform this impossible task, he bargained this manuscript against his punishment. Now, looking at the sheer proportions of this compendium, shall we say, it's 320 pages long, it is over a meter in height. How was it done in a single night? Well, we're not sure. Well, but experts have determined that the writing speed of 20 seconds per line, shall we say, and many, many hours of illustration, it would have taken close to 30 years to finish the text if it was done by a single scribe. So researchers are saying that it was penned by a single scribe, possibly a monk by the name of a character called Herman the Recluse, and it was actually created over a much longer period of time than the legend has described. Yet they cannot explain how the extensive 12-point calligraphy that shows complete uniformity and no signs of tiredness, illness, or aging, which would have been inevitable from its creator. So what is the Codex Gigas? Why is it so important? Besides all these legends and mythologies surrounding it, what does it actually contain? Well, I'll tell you what it contains. It contains the entire Vulgate version of the Bible, along with Isidore of Seville's Encyclopedia Etymology, Josephus's Antiquities of the Jew, the Cosmos of Prague's Chronicle of Bohemia, the chapters of History, Etymology, and Physiology. Contains the Calendar of Necrologium, as well as a list of brothers from the Podlians Monastery, and details of magic formula, spells, medicine, and other local records. And the entire text is uniform, it's completely perfect, and it's completely error-free. Incredible the fact that it was wrote by a single scribe, whether it be over 30 years or whether it be wrote in a single night. In terms of how that was done, absolutely incredible. And of course, depending on which word you choose, the entire text of 320 pages has a thoroughly different meaning. Just consider that for a moment. Just pause for a thought in your brain and think in the bindings of a single book, approaching the subjects of historical fact, magic, religion, all held together, all in line, and to actually see this aged historic record. I mean, all the high-res photographs, I've included 3 here, and just contemplating meanings and the secrets and the stories it tells within. I mean, it sends a chill down your spine thinking about it, and also an amazement at the same time. And I wonder what the intriguing 7 missing pages actually contain. If you go over to the Codex Gigas website, you can go and have a read, you can go and have a look at it. Well, of course, you're going to need to read Latin to have a real read of it. And this brings us to a logical, inspired conclusion to Rabbit Hole That Is Reality, Episode 10. I'd like to leave you on a little edge of something that inspires you, makes you laugh, makes you smile, makes you go away a little bit more informed, shall we say. This is Christian Lander of The Rabbit Hole That Is Reality, signing off until next time.